Hey, greetings. Michael DDA here. Thank you for joining me. Last week we started chapter 25. Has to do with the Sabbath year and the Jubilee. Both really interesting, especially the Jubilee, in light of kind of where the world is right now and what seems to be possibly going on with Nasara Jasara. We went through verse 23 last week. And we talked about kind of the here it is right here. This is the schedule for the Sabbath year. Every 7 years, there's going to be a Sabbath year, and some very important things happen on the Sabbath year. But the Jubilee year is to be consecrated by Israel's seed. It's a very important time of the year. Remember, well, here, we're going to see it right here. Let me say this. It is in the Jubilee year on the 49th year, which is a Sabbath year, because it's divisible by 7, at the Yom Kippurim, 10th day, 7th month, that the trumpet's going to be blown, signifying that the Jubilee year is coming. We're preparing for the Jubilee year. Remember, we're just getting ready to harvest our crops for the 49th year. Remember that we bring our first fruits at Sukkot. This is just 10 days before Sukkot that we're going to make this proclamation that the Jubilee year is coming. It strikes me that when we understand that the Jubilee is coming, now this is the 49th year. Remember, the 48th year, which would be the 6th year, if you will. These are comparable, 6th year, 48th year, 7th year, 49th year, 1st year, 50th year, or again, the 1st year of the next set of 7. We plan. If we know that there's a Sabbath coming, if we know that there's a Jubilee coming, we're going to plan, I think, our crops appropriately. We may have silos that we have built as we know the Jubilee year is approaching, so that we can store our food, because Jehovah, we saw last week, promises that we're going to get such an abundance in the 6th year that we're going to be eating it in the 48th year, the 6th year. We're going to be eating it in the 49th and the 50th year and the 51st year, which would be the 9th year. They talk about the 8th year. We're going to be eating it in the 8th year. We're going to be eating it in the 9th year. That's how much abundance Jehovah promises to those who will do it his way. Give the land some rest. And with that in mind, I wanted to just point out a couple things. Jehovah says, he keeps talking about the produce of your land. In fact, he calls it your possessions. Your possessions. The land is in our possession. Sometimes it goes out of our possession for a short time, but ultimately, the land is Jehovah's. Look at what it says here in verse 23, the last verse we talked about. The land shall not be sold permanently, for the land is mine. Now look what he says, for you are strangers and sojourners with me. Well, we always have to be aware and look at what these words are, because it says strangers and sojourners. Wouldn't you expect Well, actually, strangers and sojourners, they actually, here's the word, gerim is strangers. That's usually how they translate strangers. And toshavim is usually how they translate sojourners. But Israel's seed are Ezra men. So as the Ezra men own their land or possess their land, they have Ger and Toshavim who dwell with them. But Yahovah is saying the land is his and that we are as strangers and Toshavim, visitors on the land, occupants of the land with him. So interesting how he puts these things together, but you can only learn this kind of stuff if you take time to look at the Hebrew. Now, today we're going to talk about two things. And I guess we talked about it a little bit last week, but we're going to talk about it more. And I want to go to verse, I think it was 10. Yes, here it says, and you shall consecrate the 50th year. The 50th year is to be holy. And proclaim liberty throughout all the land and all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee to y'all, and each of y'all shall return to his possession. See, it's not our land, it's our possession. And we're going to return to our possession. Look what he says now. And each of you shall return to his family. We're going to return to our possession, and we're going to return to our family. We're going to talk about some of that today. I think it's going to find it very interesting. We had, here. For it is, verse 12, for it is a jubilee, it shall be holy to you, consecrated. You shall eat of its produce from the field. In this year of Jubilee, each of you shall return to his possession. So if you've sold it, you're going to be returned to your possession. But now we're going to look at some statutes, judgments, ordinances. Let's call them ordinances, statutes. I'm not sure. Instructions from Yahovah on how we're supposed to treat this time, this special time of Jubilee. Mainly talking about the 50-year Jubilee, not the 7-year Jubilee. So we left off here in verse 24. And in all the land of your possession, now keep in mind where it says the you, if it's got the blue, we're talking about Israel's seed is in blue up here. Speak to Israel's seed. So I made all of them blue. If they have a yellow in them, which I'll point out to you when we get to it, well, at the very next verse. So we're talking about Israel's seed. All in all the land of your Israel's seed's possession, Israel's seed shall grant redemption to the land. Grant redemption to the land. You think about that for a second. What does that mean? Well, this is why we're going to go through what we're going through today, because we're going to talk about what granting possession actually means. So let's start in verse 25. He says, if one of thy, he's talking to each man separately, brethren, talking about Israel's seed as a whole. So we're actually talking about two different groups of people. If one of thy, I'm going to use thy so I can communicate it better. Thy, thee, thou are all singular. And you, your, ye are all plural men. They would be in the purple. King James I think that's one of the really big benefits of the King James Version, is we can see these singular, first person versus second person versus third person. You, thou, thy, thine are all second person, and y'all is the third person, plural, the plural, second person plural. Boy, Michael, you're getting confused. Second person singular, second person plural is the difference. If one of thy brethren becomes poor and has sold some of his possession, and if his redeeming relative comes to redeem it, then he may redeem what his brother sold. This is the whole idea of the kindred redeemer. We're going to see this spelled out even more closely as we go through this, but it's one of thy brethren. Who are they? They're the kindred redeemer. Son, father, even uncle, cousins, relatives, kindred redeemers. If one of you has become poor and has sold some of his possessions, and if his redeeming relative comes to redeem it, then he may redeem what his brother sold. Now he's going to give another example. Or if the man has no one to redeem it, but he himself becomes able to redeem it, then let him count the number of years since its sale. The price that we got for the land at the time that it was sold is very, very important, because it's the basis on what we're going to renew it for, redeem it for. Let him count the number of years since its sale. There it is, since its sale. And restore the remainder to the man to whom he sold it, that he may return to his possession. What he's saying here is that if you buy somebody's land and somebody comes, a kindred redeemer, that wants to redeem it, you are obligated by what we just read. In all the land of your possession, you shall grant redemption for the land. You are obligated to sell it back or let them redeem it back. Now, let me give you an example of what we're talking about. I put this together yesterday thinking there's got to be a way that we can communicate this better. Again, only the sons own the land. The Ezra men are the ones who own the land. The Ger don't own the land. They dwell with the Ezra. The Toshavim, they're visitors. They don't own the land. They're just visitors with us. So he's talking about thy brethren. Did you want to say something, V?
No, I didn't mean to hit that. I'm sorry.
Okay, no worries. So let me just lay this out for you. I put, if a man buys a parcel in the 10th year after the Jubilee, it's all done in relation to the Jubilee and where we are in the Jubilee cycle as far as selling our land, even selling ourselves. We're going to see here today. So let's say we're 10 years into the 70-year cycle. There's 60 years left. But the price he pays will be based on the 60 years of crops that the land could potentially produce. So let's say he paid $100,000 for the parcel, knowing that at the end of 70 years, he's going to give it back. So he's buying it based on the use that he's going to get on it from the 10 years to the 70th year, 60 years. Now, after 30 years, someone can redeem the parcel. He's had it for 30 years, half the time. So now he has to sell it back. Since 30 years remain until the Jubilee, the redeeming price will be $50,000, half of what he paid. This whole redemption process is all about equity, justness, fairness in our agreements one with another. You're not going to be able to say, no, I want 100,000 still. I know I've been here for 30 years, but I still want 100,000 for it because I know you want it. No, that's not how it works. You paid 50,000 for it. You used it half the time. No, you paid 100,000 for it. You used it half the time. 50 is what's left, and 50 is what you're going to pay. Very just. We're going into a world that is going to be ruled with equity. I love equity. So often you hear about the terrible things that have gone on in our world in these past many years. And you just think, that is so wrong. Why is that allowed to happen? But it's not going to continue. Now he says, or if a man, verse 26, or if a man has no one to redeem it, and he himself becomes able to redeem it, then let him count the number of years to the sale and restore the remainder. I guess we went through that. Now it says, but if he is not able to have it restored to himself, then what was sold shall remain in the hand of him who bought it until the year of the Jubilee. And in the Jubilee it shall be released, and he shall return to his possession. And this is why I put this verse down here and reviewed this verse this morning. It says, each one of you shall return to his possession, and each one of you shall return to his family. So in this case, he's being returned to his possession. What happens to the man who sold his land because he was in arrears, he owed money? Who knows exactly what happened? He had to sell his land. Can you imagine selling your land? Or maybe it was just a portion of the land that he sold. What happens to that man? We may talk about that, or maybe we talked about it last week. I'll have to see if it comes up today. We'll see that he gets to dwell with us. The potential kindred, his kindred. Now he says, if a man, this is Jehovah again speaking, if a man, changing his subject, if a man sells a house in a walled city, then he may redeem it within a whole year after it is sold. Within a full year, he may redeem it. Now I looked at this word house. The word they use is bet. Bayit. I was kind of thinking it might be something different, a building, whatever. Because what about an office space? What about a store? Did they potentially live in the stores? Live above a store, perhaps? Maybe that's a living space. But it seems like businesses in a walled city would kind of be treated the same way. Now look what he goes. He goes on. But if it is not redeemed within the space of a year, then the house in the walled city shall belong permanently to him who bought it throughout his generations. It shall not be released at the Jubilee. Now, let's say you're buying land in the Jubilee, like we were talking about above, knowing that it's going to go back to you in 70 years or at the Jubilee, depending on where you buy it in that Jubilee cycle. Here's a house that if you don't buy it within a year, you lose it forever. Do you think that you would likely pay more for a house in a walled city than you would one that's outside a walled city? We're going to talk about what the one is outside the walled city here in just a second. I think you'd pay a lot more. And when you redeem it within the year, you're going to pretty much pay what you paid because only a year's gone by. So if you come up with the price within a year, would you anticipate a large sale, but you need a little bit of money to make it through the sale and the process? and you put your house up for sale, sold your house, and then when the business deal clears, you buy the house back. You could do that, I suppose. That'd be one way of utilizing your money. You'd lose your place of residence for a short time. But maybe that's something that would be done. Again, they have to sell it back to you within the year. And it's not going to be so much discounted. It's going to be pretty much the same price. Now he goes on. However, the houses of the villages, which have no wall around them, shall be counted as a field of the country. So you're going to treat the houses in a city as you would the fields of the country. They may be redeemed, and they shall be released in the Jubilee. So you could sell your house, get into desperate straits, sell your house in the city, and again, the $100,000 you could play the same game. You bought it in the 10th year, stayed in it for 30 years. There's still 30 years on it. It's kind of the same deal. It's going to be prorated. Or if no one does it, then you're going to get it back in the Jubilee, just like you would the field. Nevertheless, look what he says. That being the case, if it's in the city of the Levites, nevertheless, the cities of the Levites and the houses in the cities of their possession, the Levites may redeem at any time, regardless of whether or not it's in a walled city. Because I would tend to think that the Levite cities may be walled cities. They don't have that many big cities. The Levites may redeem it at any time. And if a man purchases a house from the Levites, a house from the Levites, it doesn't say a house from the Levite, it says a house from the Levites, then the house that was sold in the city of his possession shall be released in the Jubilee. For the house of the cities of the Levites are their possession among Israel's seed. Yes, that is their possession. And like it says, it's kind of like your land. The Levites don't have land per se of their own, but they have houses of their own. The communal properties around the cities of the Levites seem to be communal properties. They're owned by all the Levites that are in that land. And that takes us right into our next verse. But the field of the common land of the cities may not be sold. So you can't sell the common land of the cities. If you're a Levite, you need cash, you can sell your house. You can redeem it at any time, or it's going to come back to you at the Jubilee. But the common land, can't sell that because it's common to not just that Levite, but all the Levites who are in that city. Again, but the field of the common land of their cities may not be sold, for it is their perpetual possession. Always going to be theirs. They need land. That's how they feed themselves, beyond the tithes that come to the Levites from Israel's seed. If one of thy brethren, he's changing gears again. We're done with the land of the Levites. If one of thy brethren becomes poor and falls into poverty among y'all, then thou shalt help him, like a stranger or a sojourner, that he may live with you. This is what I was talking about before. He sold his land, but now he needs a place to stay. This is what this verse is about. If one of thy brethren becomes poor and falls into poverty among y'all, I would expect that to be, I guess it's y'all. Then thou may help him. Then thou shall help him. This is your brethren, your kindred, if you will. And you shall help him. like a stranger or a sojourner, that he may live with you. So he's going to live with you like the stranger or the sojourner would. The words that they're using here are stranger and sojourner, ger and toshav. It's actually, toshav, like a stranger or a toshav or a sojourner. That's the word they always use for sojourner. That he may live with you. So now he's going to tell us how to treat that man like a stranger or a sojourner. I put the brethren is not a stranger or a sojourner. He's an Ezra. But we will help him as we help them. That's what he's telling us here. As a stranger or a sojourner, that he may live with you. Now he goes on and tells us how to do that. He says, take no usury or interest from him, but fear but fear thy Elohim. He doesn't say your Elohim, he says thy Elohim. That thy brother may live with thee. Thou shalt not lend him your money with usury. That's what he just said above. It's a little bit redundant. Nor lend him thy food for a profit. You're going to give him money. It's not, he's not saying give him money. He says, don't lend it for usury. You can lend it, but don't lend it for usury. He's got to pay it back. The food, he's got to pay it back. How does he pay it back? I would think that he's going to pay it back by labor. He's going to work for you on your properties to be able to stay on your land, since he needs a place to go. Yahweh continues, verse 38, I am Yahovah, your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to give you the land of Canaan and to be your Elohim. You're all the same in Yahovah's sight. He goes on, and if one of your brethren who dwells by thee, one of thy brethren dwells by thee, becomes poor and sells himself. Look at this. He's selling himself to thee, to you. Thou shalt not compel him to serve as a slave. So in one case, we've got the man staying with us. In another case, we've got the man selling himself to serve us. Now, I suggested the first one, he would work for his wages. Maybe that's not the case, because he's certainly going to work for his wages. In this one, he's actually selling himself to another brother. He says, you shall not compel him to serve as a slave. One of thy brothers. This is brethren. Brethren. Thy brother. Aki, ak. Compel. Aved. Look at this. The word compel, one who serves. Here we had, how does it go? Compel him to serve as a slave. Compel, aved. The root is aved. See it in green? Aved. That's the verb for servant. One who serves. Again, aved. These are all different uses of the same three Hebrew letters. Aved. An, bet, dalet. In this context, let me continue reading. He says, as a hired servant and a sojourner, hired servant, this was translated okay, as a hired servant was seker, as a seker, or a toshavim, or toshab, he shall serve you until the year of the Jubilee. But the man in this verse and the man in the following verse must be two different kinds of men. Let me just finish reading this. 41. I'm going to read this and then we come back to it. And then he shall depart, he will serve you until the year of the Jubilee. Then he shall depart from thee, he and his, it says children, but the word that they actually use here is sons. He and his sons. They put his own family, shall return to his own family. But it says sons. Why does it say sons and not the word for children? I would expect it to be a different word, but it's saying sons. He and his sons with him shall return to his own family. See, this is what we're talking about, returning to his own possession, returning to his own family. We were reading that above, verse 10. Now, look at this. I put the man in this verse and the man in the following verse being this verse, Exodus 21:23, must be two different kinds of men. One is released at the Jubilee, the other in the seventh year. This man who sold himself is released at the Jubilee. But the man who was sold is released at the seventh year. Now, I have a challenge with that. Was this what we're talking about? The only thing I can come up with is the difference between selling himself and being sold. It's the only difference. Here it says in Exodus 21, verse 2 and 3, it says, if you buy, you, Israel's seed, if you buy a servant, a Hebrew. So this is an Israelite servant. I think it must be a man who is selling his son into service. That's all I can think that it must be because of how this verse is going to end. Let me just read this. He shall serve 6 years, and in the seventh year he shall go out free and pay nothing. Seventh year, not the Jubilee, the seventh year. If he comes in by himself, he shall go out by himself. If he comes in married, then his woman shall go out with him. This is where we got into, but I love my wife and my children. This is if the guy has given him a woman and he has children and he decides he can't leave his wife there. So he decides he's going to pierce his ear. Remember the story? He's going to pierce his ear. His master's going to hold his ear to the doorway and they're going to post it inside of the men of the city, the elders of the city, the Elohim of the city. Yes, Elohim of the city, that's what they're called. But it finishes like this. Oh, well, let me finish that verse. If he comes in married, then his woman shall go out with him. Oh, I guess the next verse is what I want. If a man sells his daughter to be a female slave, she shall not go out as the male slaves do. That leads me to believe that the Hebrew servant Aved, that is coming, that this man has bought, was sold by his father, perhaps. Because here's a man who sells his daughter to be a female slave. She shall not go out as the male slaves do. We were just talking about the male slaves. And we're talking about a Hebrew servant. Someone has sold, I think he sold his son to another man, and the other man knows that the son's going to go away in 7 years, or whatever the time is going to be at the 7th year. Maybe he sold him at the 3rd year of the 7-year cycle. He's only going to be with him for 4 years. But during that time, if he gives him a woman, and the woman has children, the children are going to belong to the one who bought the man. And he's going to go out free, but his wife and children are going to stay. That's why I say, yeah, but I love my wife. I love my children. I love my master. I'll stay. He's going to become a permanent servant at that point. But that's not the case for here. This is a man who sells himself. He gets released at the year of Jubilee, he and his sons. Is this possible that the daughters don't go? That's the question I have. Again, his woman is not mentioned, but bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh. If he came in married, he's going to go out with her. He shall return to his possession. Jehovah says regarding this, for they are my servants. They are my, actually it says, they are my servant, my servant, my servant, whom I brought out of the land of Egypt. They are his servants. We're going to talk about this a little bit more. Remember, Ezra do not have a plural. Ger have gerim. Toshab have toshavim. But Ezra, there is no plural for Ezra. Israel, there is no plural for Israel. We're going to see, my son, let my son speak to Pharaoh. Say to him, my son, not sons, my son, my firstborn is Israel. Let my son go that he may serve me. Aved, me. They are my servant. They are my servant, whom I brought out of the land of Egypt. They shall not be sold as slaves. That's why they're able to redeem them. You shall not rule over him with rigor. So if he's yours, don't rule with rigor like you would the normal aved that are with you. You shall not rule over him with rigor, but thou shalt fear thy Elohim. Now he goes on. As for thy male and female slaves, whom you have from the nations, we want to believe that slavery is a thing of the past. I don't think it is. Does Jehovah change? Does his word endure forever? Is there a benefit to becoming a servant of a Hebrew man, an Ezra man? These are all things that we need to think about and really discuss amongst ourselves. As for thy male and female slaves, servants, Eved, whom you may have from the nations that are all around you, from them you may buy male and female slaves. Moreover, you may buy, it says, the children of the strangers. The children of the strangers? Remember, it's Israel and the Gerim who dwell with you. That's usually what gets translated as strangers. But look at the word that they use here. They put strangers, but the word is toshavim. Big difference. From the toshavim's seed is really what it says. Moreover, you may buy from the toshavim's seed who dwell among you and their families who are with you, which they may beget in your land, and they shall become your property. Your property. They're not Israel. They're not Gerim. They're becoming our property. Permanently. 46. And you may take them as an inheritance for your sons. That's what it says, for your sons, your banim. It's transliterated to be your banim, but that's it right there, for your banim. After you, to inherit them as a possession. They shall be your permanent slaves. But regarding your brethren, Israel's seed are your brethren, you shall not rule over one another with rigor. Does that mean that we rule over our servants with rigor? Expect them to work hard? Sounds like it. Now, again, using these words, sojourner, stranger, stranger, sojourner. So weird. So weird. Look at this. Here it says, now if they put stranger or sojourner or stranger, are they purposely trying to confuse the reader of the scriptures? I think sometimes they are. I point this out wherever I can. Because look what it says. Normally it's sojourner. What would we expect to see with sojourner? We'd expect to see tosha, would we not? Or stranger. Stranger generally gets translated in the New King James as from ger. So you would expect this to be toshiv or ger. But it's just the opposite. It's ger or the toshiv. Ger or the toshiv. Close to thee becomes rich. If the ger or the toshiv close to thee becomes rich, and one of thy brethren who dwells by him becomes poor and sells himself to thee, they said, now they're saying stranger or ger, stranger or toshiv, which they got right in a sense because it is ger and toshav, close to thee, or to a member of the toshaviv's family. No, the stranger's family, the ger's family. They got that one right. You know, in a sense, this is correct too. I should put that in a different color. I just assumed, I guess in my mind, that since they put the sojourner first, that they would put the stranger and the stranger second, that they would do the same thing down here, but they didn't. They switched it up. So in one case, they're calling the ger a sojourner, and the second case, they're calling the ger a stranger, which he is. I mean, if we're going to follow pattern that we've had all along. You just got to look at these words. But again, he's selling himself to the stranger or the sojourner close to you to be a member or to a member of the stranger's family. After he is sold, he may be redeemed from his brethren. After he is sold, after he's sold, he may be redeemed again. It says, from his brethren may redeem him. I wish I would have. Oh, I'm sorry. One from his brethren shall redeem him. That's what it was. One from his brethren may redeem him. Let me just, he goes on here. May redeem him. Or his uncle. So we're talking about who these brethren are. One of his brothers may redeem him, or his uncle, or his uncle's son, his cousin, may redeem him. Anyone who is near of kin to him in his family may redeem him. This is why we always talk about the kindred redeemer. This is what a kindred redeemer is. Somebody who is near of kin that is going to redeem the person or the land back to the person to his family, or the person's land to himself, in whichever case it may be. Or if he is able, he may redeem himself. So you can redeem yourself if you come into money eventually. Who knows? Maybe you have a relative that died and all of a sudden you've got some wealth. You can redeem yourself. We'll talk about what that looks like. How much do you redeem yourself for? That's the topic of the next thing we're going to talk about. Thus he shall reckon with him who bought him, the man who bought him. The price of his relief shall be in accordance to the number of years from the year that he was sold, and the amount that he was sold to him until the year of the Jubilee. It shall be according to the time of a hired servant for him. Do you hear what they're saying? The land was sold according to the crops that it would produce in that amount of time. If the land has 2 crops twice a year, and he's got 70 years, how much is the average crop sold for? Now, that may change. If you have a vineyard, maybe it's a much higher price. If it's something that you got to sow every year, if it's hay, if it's corn, all those things are going to be average prices. But you're going to come to an agreement on what that price will be. Depending on that agreement is going to be what's going to be for closing the deal when you want to redeem the property or the man. In this case, the land was done by crops. In this case, the man is done by the time of a hired servant for him. What would you pay a hired servant to work for you for the next 70 years? That's what you're going to charge this man. And I suppose he's going to get the money. Maybe he's got debts that he's got to pay it with. But now, again, if he is able to do it, he can redeem himself. So again, you have a kindred redeemer, or he can redeem it himself. But he's going to do it according to the hired servant, according to the time of a hired servant for him. That's the portion of it is. If there are still many years remaining, according to them, he shall repay the price of his redemption from the money which he was bought, for the price at which he was bought. That's how he's going to do it. And if there remains a few years until the year of the Jubilee, then he shall reckon to him. And according to his years, he shall repay him the price of his redemption. Okay, I think let's look at this. Here, this I thought made it a little bit more clear. This is English ESV. What is the ESV? ESV is English Standard Version. It says, if there are many years left, he shall pay proportionately for his redemption some of his sale price. Do you understand what's going on? It still has to do with the original sale price and the amount of years that's passed. That's how it's going to be worked out proportionately. Very equitable. The next verse, it says, and if there remains a few years until the year of the Jubilee, then he shall reckon to him according to his years and shall repay him the price of his redemption. Here's another translation, same one, ESV again. If there remains but a few years until the year of the Jubilee, he shall calculate and pay for his redemption in proportion to the years of his service. Yes, it's kind of like the man's getting his money back for the unused portion that he didn't get the guy's service for. Almost done. 3 verses. He shall be with him as a yearly hired servant. He was paid as a shakir, and so now he's going to be treated as a shakir. Yeah, I think I've got the word here. Sakir, as a sakir, a hired servant, year by year. Year, shana by yashana. He shall be released, and here it is again. And if he's not redeemed in these years, then he shall be released in the year of the Jubilee. He and his, what it says sons. He and his sons. They put children. In a way, children seems right, doesn't it? Taf is the word for children, male and female. How come it doesn't use tafim, his children? Taf would be a child, tafim would be the children. Why does it say sons? He and his sons. Here it is. Clearly sons. Benim, he and his sons. But what about the daughters? His daughter. What about his daughters? Why do I have that twice? What about his daughters? Look at the next verse. By the way, this has to do with him going back to his possessions, or going back to his family, the man going back to his family. But the last verse says this: for Israel's seed are, look what it says. For Israel's seeds are servants to me. My servant, Israel's seed is my servant. Remember about the plural, whom I brought out of the land, out of Egypt's land. I am Yehovah, your Elohim. Here's the verse that I was talking about. Then thou shalt say to Pharaoh, thus you shall say, thus says Yehovah, my son, doesn't say sons, my son, my firstborn, singular, is Israel. So I say to thee, let my son go, that he may serve me. And if thou refuse to let him go, indeed I will kill thy son, thy firstborn. Yeah, there's a lot of subtleties in the scriptures. And you don't really get to see them until you look at the Hebrew to get a better understanding. I pray that this class helps you to learn to decode the scriptures. I spent a lot of time learning the Hebrew letters and how they work together, how they work with endings. It's not that hard, especially for the ancient Hebrew. It's much easier. I would encourage you to do the same. It's like opening a whole new world, learning the difference. They see that the born in the land man, the stranger who dwells with thee, the Toshavim shall not eat the Passover. The Ben Nakar shall not eat. You got to learn those words because they're life to you and your understanding. Remember, knowledge leads to understanding. Understanding leads to wisdom. Get wisdom. That's what we've got to get. And that's what I try to give to you each week. Next time, we're going to be talking about, is it going to move? There it is. We're going to be talking about the blessings and the curses. I think you're going to find it interesting. So, thank you for joining me today, and I hope you'll join me again. Catch you later. Bye now.